According to CNN, at least 2 more cases have been confirmed at the White House, and we've learned a White House press corps reporter and a Utah senator who met with the Supreme Court nominee have also tested positive. Countless people who were in contact are also undergoing testing, including Joe Biden and his wife, who tested negative today after being with the president in Cleveland for Tuesday's debate. That's in addition to all the Trump family members and White House staffers who were also in contact and are now undergoing testing. All of this reminding the American public just how easily the virus can spread.